One more minute. The meeting will come to order. Can you hear me in the back? Seems to be a slight echo. Try to get a little back. Welcome to the 2022 Plymouth Town Meeting. Robert's rules will be the rules of order for this meeting. This is no longer a meeting where only legal voters of the town of Plymouth may speak, because we are not voting our budget and articles from the floor. We are voting by Australian ballot. But I'm still using Robert's rules because it's a very good way to run a meeting. All motions and remarks should be addressed to the moderator. Please stand to be recognized and state your name clearly. All motions must be made and seconded. A motion can be amended and that amendment amended once. Although, quite frankly, we're not voting the motion, so that's somewhat irrelevant. We still have to get them on the floor to discuss. Each person will get one chance to speak during any debate before anyone can speak a second time on any issue. No one may speak more than twice in debate on any question, although I have given people broad latitude with that regard. Please use the microphone so that everyone can hear you. Before we start the meeting, Select Board Chair Jay Coleman is going to explain the Zoom etiquette for those attending remotely.
Welcome everybody on Zoom. We ask, if you're not speaking, please have your mute button on. If you would like to speak, we'd like you to raise your hand. And the raise your hand button is at the bottom of your screen under reactions, and you'll see a little hand. If you hit that, I'll be watching for you in the Zoom and you'll get a chance to speak. I'll let Tom know. And when you do speak, please state your name. Thank you.
Let's get on with the meeting. This is just not going to work. I have 3 shots and feel fairly safe. Warning. The legal voters of the town of Plymouth are hereby warned to meet at the Plymouth Municipal Building at 7 p.m. on Monday, February 28th, to transact at that time business not involving voting by Australian ballot or voting required by law by ballot. The polls will be open Tuesday, March 1st, 2022, here at the Plymouth Municipal Building from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the purpose of voting by Australian ballot. The business to be transacted will include Article 1, to elect town officers for ensuing years by Australian ballot, town moderator, selectman, lister, trustee of public funds, cemetery commissioner, and first constable and second constable. Article 2 is a long one. That's our appropriations, to see if the town will vote $12,205 for human services to be allocated as follows. American Red Cross, $250. Black River Area Community Coalition, $500. Black River Good Neighbors, $500. Black River Valley Senior Center, $2,000. Fletcher Memorial Library, $1,200. Green Mountain Economic Development Corp., $302. Green Up Vermont, $50. HCRS Mental Health Services, $568. Okemo Valley TV, $800. That's the nice people who are providing our communications. Plymouth Historical Society, $500. Plymouth Memory Tree, $250. Plymouth Press, $50. Ottaquechee Health Foundation, $600. Senior Solutions Council on Aging for Southeast Vermont, $300. The Current Bus, $125. Tyson Library, $500. Visiting Nurse and Hospice, $2,150. Vermont Center for Independent Living, $175. Vermont Rural Fire Protection Task Force, $100. Vermont Trails and Greenways, $85. Windsor County Mentors, $500. Windsor County Youth Services, $400. Women's Freedom Center, $300. We're almost out of letters if you add more people here. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to raise $1,250,000, $233 in taxes to pay estimated expenses in the amount of $1,683,583. Article 4, to see if the legal voters of the town will authorize Plymouth Select Board to establish a general reserve fund in accordance with 24 Vermont statutes annotated number 2804. Article 5, to see if the legal voters of the town will authorize the Plymouth Select Board to establish a bridge and highway reserve fund in accordance with 24 Vermont statutes annotated 2804. And Article 6, to see if the legal voters of the town vote to pay to the treasurer real property taxes in 2 installments with due dates of September 1st, 2022 and February 1st, 2022, with an interest charge of 1% for the first 3 months and 1.5% thereafter for each month if each installment is not paid by the due date after February 1st, 2022. Any unpaid taxes would be charged an 8% collection fee plus the interest fees. And Article 7, to transact any other necessary and legal business. Dated at Plymouth, Vermont, this, I think I actually have the date somewhere else, day of January 2022, Jay Coleman, Chair, Rick Kaminsky, and Keith Cappellini. So let's move to Article 1, which we vote by Australian ballot. Let's go to Article 2, the Human Services, which I'm not going to read again. Do we have a motion? Okay, we have a motion to discuss. Do we have a second? Someone might want to raise their hand for a second? That Margot? Okay. We have a motion and a second to see if the town will vote $12,205 for human services to be allocated as listed in the town report. Is there any discussion? None? Yes.
Ann Brown. I'm a member of the board of the Plymouth Memory Tree. And I just thought I'd give you a little more information about what the Memory Tree's been up to. As many of you know, we did not send out a fundraising letter this past year. We normally do that in the fall, asking people to send in their memorials for friends and loved ones who have died in the previous year. We felt that because we did not have a large request for funds last year, and because everything had been so turned upside down by the COVID pandemic, that we would forego the fundraising and start it up again this coming year. We did light a tree in memory of all of those who had died and in memory of those who had died of COVID. We did have some income of about $2,100. We had minimal expenses, $70. And we gave out grants. We have a scholarship program for those who don't know. We award scholarships for graduating seniors from Woodstock High School who are residents of Plymouth and apply through the guidance office there. And they attend their first semester of college, and if that is successfully completed, we award a scholarship of $500 each. So We had 2 of those last year, and we had $2,100 in additional grants. We ended the year with a healthy balance of over $20,000. Part of that we're saving in case we have another Irene-type disaster. We want to be ready to be able to take care of people. So far in 2022, we've had one $500 scholarship award and 3 grants for heating. We expect more of that now that the funding that came from the federal government because of COVID has expired. We're getting applications for grants for heating and other types of needs this year. So we encourage people to fill out an application or give one to their friends, and I'm going to leave some with Sandy. We have a slightly revised form, so they will be here in the office. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Article 1? If there's no further discussion, we will move to, Article 2. We will move to Article 3, and this is your budget article, to see if the town will vote to raise $1,250,233 in taxes to pay estimated expenses in the amount of $1,683,583. Do we have a motion? We have a motion. Karen Evans. Do we have a second? We have a second. Michelle. Is there any discussion of Article 3? Is there anybody that has anything to say about the budget? Okay. Sounds like everyone accepts that the article stands as it is and will vote tomorrow. We will move on. That's a first, by the way. To see if the legal voters of the town will authorize the Plymouth Select Board to establish a general reserve fund in accordance with 24 VSA, Vermont Statutes Annotated, I don't know what this ampersand is, 2804. Do we have a motion to discuss? We have a motion to discuss. Do we have a second? Okay, got a second, Ann Brown. Is there any discussion on Article 4? Anything? Okay, in the back. Jim Rieger?
Yes, sir. Can you explain it?
I can't.
In selectmen?
Yeah.
Grab the mic.
Yes. Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah, so this is trying to get in compliance with our audit and be legal about how we handle reserve funds. Last year, we found ourselves, fortunately, in the position of having $1.2 million. Not exactly legal is my understanding according to the auditors, but it was really fortunate for us that we had the funds to pay for a building. What we'd like to do going ahead is establish reserve funds. Last year you voted to allow us to set those balances. So we would like to establish this reserve fund to legally carry through 15 and 20% of the town's annual budget just to maintain cash flow. There's a problem. We know we have some issue with delinquent taxes, so there's always a need for cash flow, and we would hope that the town would not borrow money. So we're creating this fund. We're going to set a threshold that can change over time as needs change, but that's our goal, to do this legally and compliant.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Article 4? No further discussion. We'll move to Article 5 to see if the legal voters of the town will authorize the Plymouth Select Board to establish a bridge and highway reserve fund in accordance with 24 VSA 2804. Is there a motion? You got a motion. Is there a second? Okay, let's discuss Article 5. Any discussion of Article 5?
We'll make you do it again.
Excuse me. Any discussion?
Is that reserve fund similar to the previous one?
Yeah, right now we have a highway fund, or it's a highway equipment fund, and all the money has been going into that. You'll see a budget line, it's been assistant, spend about $130,000 a year. We did some capital planning and realized we don't quite need that much money in the equipment reserve, but the highway foreman and road commissioner have advised us that there's some upcoming bridge projects. And so rather than being surprised by those or having to kind of, have taxes go up and down every year, we'd like to start capital planning for bridges, large culverts, road repairs, things like that. So it's just kind of planning in advance. And I should say, in the near term, we do not imagine raising that $130,000. We think that's about right for the next year or two, pending inflation, but just splitting that money apart that we're collecting and putting it into two separate accounts. Again, it's sort of an accounting function.
So will there be like a cap on that? So if it's 130,000, that if it's not spent and you only need, let's say you spend 20, the next year you'd only look for like a $20,000 addition to it?
And then once we reach the limit in that fund, then we stop, then we stop. We lower taxes.
Thanks.
Is there any further discussion on Article 5? Yes, sir.
Is the money to fund Articles 4 and 5 included in Article 3, 1.25 million? Is the money that will go to fund Article 4 and 5, the reserve funds, included in the town budget number of 1.25 million?
So for Article 4, that money exists. There's actually a surplus based on what we would propose, but we'll be using that money for the building. For the money that's spent on the building, the remainder satisfies Article 4. And half of the $130,000 in the highway transfer for the equipment will satisfy Article 5.
So you anticipate an annual line item to fund these reserve funds?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, Karen.
So basically just breaking everything down and putting it like you did, well, like some people do it for home and businesses. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to Article 6. To see if the legal voters of the town vote to pay the treasurer real property taxes in 2 installments with due dates of September 1st, 2022 and February 1st, 2023, with an interest charge of 1% in the first 3 months and 1.5% thereafter for each month if each installment is not paid by the due date after February 1st, 2022. Any unpaid taxes would be charged an 8% collection fee plus interest fees. Do we have motion? Do we have second? I see 2 hands. I guess we do. Any discussion on Article 6? Yes, Steve.
Steve Redalis, Plymouth. Anyway, I know we had some discussion before when the taxes are due on the first of the month and so forth. I think one of the problems that I do see, I know some years ago we voted on it, that it was when it was received. I think it would be more fair and more in line with the state and the federal government to use the postmark on the envelope. So if it's due February 1st, and that's postmarked by February 1st, and it comes on the 5th, it should still be acceptable as being on time. I know with COVID last year, I had some Christmas cards that were mailed out in the beginning of December. I didn't even get until January. So if somebody's mailing that, it's really of the fault, and they mail it on time, it's really of the fault of the post office or some systemic issue with that. I know that we can't amend it right now, but I think going forward, it's something to really consider, is to going back to that and keeping it fair to everybody. So, I mean, some people that, if you live out of state or out of the country, that has to be, obviously, you have to plan on when it gets mailed, but, if it was mailed from Florida and it got here on February 2nd, it was mailed January 15th, it should still be acceptable as being on time. So that's all I have to say, believe it or not.
Anybody on the select board want to comment on that or have an issue with that?
We have to vote on it.
No, I don't know how to change that, but I guess
to
we'll
vote on
have
it.
to research that, Tom.
Next year.
That would be something maybe to propose at a select board meeting?
You
Well,
have to,
it would
you have
be-
to vote on it, like we voted, right now it stands by the days, there's no postmark. You have to vote, re-vote it, and
When it got changed the last time, it was amended at town meeting. But I think it's just, like I said, going forward, I think it's something to think about. Even if we do that at the general election, which will be next November,
Right, you have to
you know,
get on
that's
the ballot.
something that actually could probably go on, it'd be included in that.
So the select board heard that, right? Okay.
that's what you would
Select-
have to do, and it'd have to be voted on.
Okay. Good. Any further discussion of Article 6? Okay, Article 7. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I have a question on the delinquent taxes of over 100 people from Hawk. How are we ever going to get that money?
Can you speak to that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get my timing straight. A while back, beginning of about a year ago, we decided and we got a town approval to have an appointed delinquent tax collector versus an elected tax collector because we weren't happy with the progress. About 2 years had gone by without any sales. Since that has happened, we've appointed a delinquent tax collector, which is Sandy. We've hired on an assistant to help her with delinquent tax work, and we've hired an attorney. And we've been communicating with that attorney just as recently as this past week, and they tell me that we will have a tax sale in April. So they're well along the path of trying to solve that problem. It'll be a very large sale with multiple units included in it. Just because we've taken some steps forward, we've already had several people come forward and pay some of their delinquent taxes because they know we're getting serious about it. And I think once they see those tax sales go into the paper, you're going to see a lot more people come forward and settle up their delinquent tax claims. So we're well aware it's a serious problem, and we've done everything we can to move it forward, and we're going to stay right on our attorneys to make sure that they get it done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't mean to cut you off so quickly. Any further discussion on Article 6? If there's no further discussion, we'll go to my favorite article, Article 7, to transact any other necessary and legal business. This is, of course, non-binding, but we only get together once a year, so if you have anything you want to inform your neighbors about or ask the Select Board, this is your time to do it. Yes, Karen?
I just wanted to make note that we need a correction for the Board of Civil Authority. The listers are not part of the BCA. So if we could remove the listers' names from the list. They are listers. And one other thing, voter booths, we've talked about this. We need a voter registration booth. We're aware that we can get one from Montpelier. I don't know if Sandy orders that or how that goes. So it's already ordered and with our name on it waiting for us?
We hope so.
I think that's a yes.
So someone's going to pick it up? Is that what we're saying? Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have anything to weigh in on other business? Gentleman in the back was first. Then you, Michelle.
My name is Sam, getting I live on Valhalla Road. I was made aware that for class 4 roads, if a class 4 road goes along your property, you need to have a permit to plow it.
Yeah, could you speak up, sir?
Oh, this isn't working?
Yeah, it's not working. I thought-
It's working.
Oh, okay. Well, now I'm not the Lone Ranger anymore. Yeah,
It's not
for
working.
class 4 roads, I was made aware that you need a permit to plow the road. A lot of properties where I live, the driveways are class 4 roads. That doesn't make sense to me.
Anybody know anything about that?
Oh, I read it in a document that was sent from the town of Plymouth.
Yeah, it's in our, it's in the town, if the town doesn't plow the road, I believe you have to get permission to plow.
What if it's
yourself.
your just driveway? I mean,
It's your driveway? It's nothing that's, yeah. I
is
mean,
there
I
a
don't,
reason that was enacted?
Well, where did you read this or see this?
It was in a document in response to a letter that a friend of mine, neighbor sent about reclassifying a class 4 road above Hale Hollow Road, McAwee, I think it's 39.
Based on our recent
Yeah,
policy, it's at the
He
discretion
said it
of
was
the.
added in there without discussion or any other public comment. So I was curious as to why, since,
yeah, and it's a,
I mean, people have to plow their driveways if it snows.
it's a policy, not an ordinance. I'm sure you can get permission from either the road commissioner or the highway foreman. If it's something you'd like to see amended, we could consider that as
It
well.
doesn't make sense to me to have it in there. I mean, it's, you know, if it's your driveway, it's your driveway, right?
Well, if it's a class 4 road, it's
Not your driveway. Not your driveway.
not your driveway.
Well, it's not maintained by anybody or anything.
So how do you get into your property? You have to go up the class 4 road.
Right,
Correct.
generally you'd request
Okay.
that somebody, the town, plow your road. Unless you want to do it, then you just request permission to plow it yourself.
There's no fee or anything?
No.
Just a plow guy.
Nope.
All right. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you.
It's a road.
And Michelle, you had your hand up.
He lives off a class 4 road.
Michelle Pingree. I'm just curious, since it's been like 10 years since the cell tower was put up here in Plymouth, what the status on it is. I know that no carriers have been on it, and I'm just, from a lister standpoint, I get people always asking, what's up with the cell tower, what's up with the cell tower? So I just was curious, what's up with it?
I don't have a clue.
Yep,
Lots of people ask about it, but.
yeah.
I don't even know who owns it, Michelle. Is it Comcast? or-
SBA Towers, they're out of Boca Raton, Florida, and the cell tower currently sits on the Lions property up off Grandview.
Yeah, I know where it is.
People ask about it, and I
Yeah.
don't know what to tell them.
I guess I would have to say we have no new information on it. It's private property, it's a private tower. Nobody's contacted us about activity on it, and we have no new information.
So I'll just tell the people that call that maybe get a hold of, I can give them the information for SBA then.
They're welcome to, sure.
Perfect, thank you.
Michelle, so you can talk to Melissa about it. It was originally built by AT&T like 8 years ago.
All I know is right after Irene.
Yeah, yeah. And then it's also, apparently, VTEL had an option to co-whatever, with it. And then they decided not to do it. So I've asked the same thing. I've called AT&T, I've called VTEL.
I mean, a while back I called SBA and I never got a response.
Yeah. Apparently, they're still getting paid for it.
To my understanding, they're getting a stipend every month. yes.
Exactly, so, yeah, I know, so, for whatever reason, you know, as cell phone companies tend to do, they
I know it's
decide
kind
to,
of a-
you know, activate it or not, but it's still there, and you would think.
Well, it's been 10 years, that's why I asked.
I know, I agree, I actually put that in, you know, with the ARPA funds, maybe we could get them to, you know,
Do something.
activate it.
It'd be nice for safety, because
Oh,
after Irene, we were
absolutely.
just,
You may have somebody to ask about that in a minute or two.
perfect.
Yes, sir.
I was just gonna say, do you know if that's included in the?
I'm gonna if you don't mind, I'm gonna close the meeting and introduce Charlie, but I think probably you'll get better answers rather than just going back and forth. So, if there's no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce two guests to our town, Charlie and Carolyn Kimball. Charlie is our state legislature representative, and he's kind enough to come here to town meeting. And I'll have to say this, Charlie, we didn't do a lot of discussion on this, so they must all be here to see you. So please, we'd love to have you share with us what's happening in Montpelier. As usual, I am looking forward to hearing you speak. If you'd like, you can probably take one of those mics and move it so you back wherever you want it, so you can feel safe. And
Is this all right?
Mask up again. thank you for a real easy town meeting.
You're welcome.
How's that? Okay. Well, good evening. Glad to be back with you again. Feels like we're almost back to normal, almost. It's been a heck of a year for Plymouth, for sure. Between the road project, the bridges and culverts on 100, the road repaving project on 100A, we've had several conversations with the select board about the timing of those and tried to influence what the state was doing to no avail. I apologize for not being able to change that at all. Seems not to be, there it is. And then also the finding that the dam on Amherst Lake is not meeting standards and the controversy surrounding that. And then also the building project that you're embarking on with allocating the excess funds. So you've got a lot going on in Plymouth. And I've certainly been trying to involve myself, keeping aware to see what we can do to help at the state level. A lot of times it's a matter of advocacy and trying to get people on the telephone that you may not be able to reach. There have been some very strong advocates for both the Amherst Lake and getting the people from the Department of Environmental Conservation involved. But that's a long time project for sure. The question about the cell tower, there is currently a proposal from the governor's office to put $50 million into erecting, I think, 100 different cell towers across the state to improve communications. And part of that is predicated on the participation of one of the major carriers, whether it's AT&T or another major carriers. But it won't work unless that happens. You might remember some years ago, the state owned a number of small repeaters that they hung on telephone poles in various locations that had 2G service. And now we're talking about 5G. 2G was a whole lifetime ago. And there wasn't sufficient coverage, and none of the major carriers actually located on those telephone poles. So the state took them all down, had a whole garage full of them, and then got rid of them. So the state is going to hopefully allocate that $50 million to increase that cell phone coverage, not only just for safety, but also for communication that people can go with their daily lives. So that's pending. So I'm not sure. I mean, with that particular tower, I know they're looking for proposals as to where those towers could be located. So I guess we'll find out. The Department of Public Service, and a guy named Clay Purvis heads up that program, so I can follow up with Clay to see what's going on. It hasn't been approved by the legislature yet, but I trust it will be. What the state is dealing with is really all the federal monies that have come into the state. You know, over $3 billion has been given to the state in various programs, not directly to the residents through the unemployment insurance and other various payments, but that's a lot of money. We've never had this much money before, and things are being funded to a degree that's incredible. From the American Rescue Plan Act, it was $1 billion a little over a year ago. And we've allocated about $600 million of that money, and there's another $400 million in a total package with general funds and whatnot of about $500 million. A lot of it's being put into housing and to try to do a number of things. One is for more housing for the working Vermonters, more housing for those folks that are finding themselves without a home and transitioning to homes, a lot of low-income housing as well. So it's well over $100 million has been allocated for affordable housing through the Vermont Housing Conservation Board. We've got a lot of money applied to broadband communications, over $150 million last year, another $95 million this year. A lot in terms of capital improvements and infrastructure, and also for climate adaptation, for towns to be able to build more resilient highways, more resilient buildings. So it's an incredible amount of money. And then we talk about workforce. There's two issues that we're dealing with. One is, sorry not to have my back to you guys. Is that all right? Yeah, okay. All right. So if we think about workforce, I'm going to raise this so I don't bend over. Is that all right? All right, cool. We've got 24,000 fewer people in the workforce now than we had 3 years ago. So there are a lot of reasons. We've got a workforce in Vermont of about 300,000 people, 320,000 people. So that's a significant drop. It's for a number of reasons. You know, one is that people decided, you know what? I looked at my 401k plan before last week, And it was enough for me to actually retire and stop doing what I'm doing. So there's a lot of early retirements. Another is that people took kind of a stake of what's going on in the pandemic and said, you know, I don't want to do that job anymore. I want to do a different job. So they stopped doing that. Other folks were not able to continue working because of the pandemic. Either they had COVID, their kids had COVID, or relative they're taking care of had COVID. So some of the schools were closed, some of the daycares were closed. They couldn't actually go back to work. And that continues now still, as much as we try to be back to normal. So there's those 24,000 people that are fewer in the workforce. How do we get them back to work if they want to go back to work? So what we're looking at in the legislature is removing any kind of barriers. Is it licensing? Is it benefits? Are they going to lose benefits if they go back to work even part-time? If you're a state employee and you're on a pension, or if you're a teacher and you've retired but maybe you want to work a couple days a week, is there a way to do that? We desperately need nurses. So there's a problem with the nursing industry in that we don't have enough nurse educators to train the people that are in the program. So we're looking at how do we stand up more nurse educators, and something called nurse preceptors, those people on nursing floors that have nurses follow them and learn how to do their job, kind of a job shadow. So that's one of the major industries that, or major occupations, that is a matter of public safety. And can we invest money to actually help address the situation? So my committee is the Committee on Housing, not Committee on Housing, we're Committee on Economic Development and Commerce. And we've been dealing with workforce development issues since the beginning of the session, which started January 4th. We're about to pass out a fairly major piece of legislation, and when we come back by March 11th, dealing with some of those issues in workforce development. A lot of it's around that path between high school and career and technical education centers and colleges, Community College of Vermont, and the Vermont Technical College and the other state colleges. You know, having it so that a high school graduate doesn't think they need to go to college and incur about $35,000 in debt, which is the average, in order to earn a living. You can do that with a certification right out of high school and with some with a very decent paying job working with your hands. There's some great jobs that are available and some great careers that you can have. So that's part of what we're working on. If we think about it, there's the big issues: housing, childcare, workforce, and broadband. Those are the four issues in terms of what the legislature is trying to address this session. And that's about it. There's every legislative session, there's about 1,000 bills that we deal with. So there's everything ranging from Proposition 1, which is trying to remove, Proposition 2, removing slavery from the Vermont Constitution, and that's coming to the voters on November 8th. Also, the constitutional amendment is Proposition 5, which is enshrining reproductive liberty and giving individuals control over their reproductive systems. So it does provide for the legality of an abortion, and that's often how it gets just labeled as the abortion bill. And that also is coming to the voters on November 8th. These are constitutional amendments to the Vermont Constitution, which takes a long time to go through. There's only so many times you can take a look at it. It has to be passed by 2 legislative sessions in a row. So we had to vote on those 2 constitutional amendments this session, as well as 2 years ago. We voted on them as well. And then it has to be approved by the voters. So this is kind of a big deal. It hasn't happened often that the Vermont Constitution has been changed. So I'm here to answer questions, to find out what's on your minds and what I might be able to do to help. Yeah.
I was wondering if you heard anything about the dropout rate for high school students. I've been hearing stories from clients that there's quite a few.
I haven't heard anything specifically about dropout rates. I haven't. I know that the mental health stress is incredible in our school systems. Yeah.
They all got their GEDs, but now they got to get work. There is work. But
There's work.
There's work, but whether they want to do it or not.
I know that the designated agencies that deal with mental health issues around the state also have a shortage of people that are on their staffs. They've got more than a 10% vacancy rate. Our corrections department has an even worse vacancy rate right now. There's a lot of proposals around how to correct that, but it takes time, and And it's really hard. We don't have enough workers in the state of Vermont to fill the open positions. So part of it is, do you try to get people off the sidelines? Do you try to, we can't increase the birth rate fast enough in order for them to be working. Some countries have tried that to no avail, but there's, so then do you bring people in? Are there ways to bring in new workers to the state of Vermont? One of the policies that the state came up with is to pay people to move here. I personally hate that policy, but that is what the state had done. Because everybody else is trying to do the same thing, trying to bring in new workers. It's not just unique to Vermont. Every state and any rural area faces that same issue. So it's really, what does it come down to? It comes down to those fundamentals. Can I afford to live here? Is this a place I want to live? Do I feel like I belong? Can I earn a living here? And if my one job falls out, do I have another job that I can go work at? So those are some of the things that are really fundamental to rural areas. That we need to strengthen and improve. But anyway, not a campaign, I know. But,
No. We like to hear you. We have more people that want to ask questions.
Josh?
So I actually got a two-part question. First, what is your stance and what is the movement on the retirement plan for state employees? And second, what is your thoughts on the carbon tax that is in Montpelier right now?
Okay. There's a couple things. One is the pension liability for state employees and also the state teachers fund. With state employees and the teachers fund, there have been negotiations all over the summer. And recently, I think in October actually, the groups came together. This is people from the unions, people from the state, and people from the legislature working together to see if there was a path forward. And there's been $150 million reserved from last year to put towards the deficit. But there's also negotiations that both the union agreed to and all the other players agreed to look at how to make the pension system whole, not to affect any of the benefits that have been promised to any of the people that are currently in it. And the plan that was agreed to saves about $2 billion. Right now, the deficit, the liability is over $4 billion, so it doesn't get all of it, but it gets a lot of it. So some of the things around contribution, also limiting benefits for some of the judiciary branch at a certain level. I don't have the particulars in front of me, but I can certainly give them to you. Yeah.
I've seen the draft.
Yeah.
I'm just curious on where that negotiation has leveled out to.
Yeah.
What are the last of that?
Yeah. Currently, it's in the Senate Committee on Government Operations, and then they're about to pass it out. It's going to come over to the House. The House Committee on Government Operations has been dealing with the reapportionment of legislative districts. And every 10 years you have to do it based on population changes. 2020 census came out and showed what population changes there are. So the recommendation on that, just a quick diversion, if I may. So Plymouth is currently aligned with Woodstock and Reading. Plymouth has before been aligned with Mount Holly and Ludlow. There was the first proposal came out to move Plymouth back to to Ludlow. As part of an alignment of that district. The second proposal that came out, and the one that's going to come out of the legislature to the House, is to keep the existing district the way it is. And it's always about how much of a variant is there between the ideal population base and what the actual population base is. If you take Reading, Woodstock, and Plymouth together, there's been zero population change in the past 10 years. Zero. Which is incredible, permanent residents. And so that's amazing. Killington reports a pretty significant increase from 2010 to 2020 for folks that they could be COVID refugees. It might be temporary, it might be permanent, we don't know. But that is what's affecting some of the changes in that particular legislative district.
How has it changed inside the three towns?
Yeah, Woodstock lost about 30 people from 3,033 to 3,003, I think. I can't remember if Plymouth lost a few, but it's not many. It's maybe like 30, and Reading gained 30. Yeah, the voter registration. Every town manages their. Yeah, every town manages their voter registration list a little differently. Some of it's art, some of it's real science. As to how aggressively, I know that when I've moved from one town to another, the town called me up and said, "You're not here anymore." Other towns will send a letter and wait for it a couple of times. So it's, yeah. I know there's a real procedure and stuff like that. But your question, Josh, was on the second one was on the carbon tax. So there's no carbon tax per se. There's a bill going through about a clean heat standard, and that might be what you're talking about, which is looking at ensuring that the fuel supply that is used for most fuel is burning less carbon. So it's then working with fuel oil dealers to ensure that they have a cleaner form of fuel that burns cleaner. Right now, the fuel dealers are in conversations with a lot of the equipment owners equipment dealers at the same time to figure out how do you deal with it and how do you make that transition. So from what I've understood is that all parties are at the table saying we can make this work without it being a carbon tax, but being a savings for the consumers.
That was the biggest thing, the saving, because the way the bill reads is it's not going to be a savings for the consumers. And I'll speak for myself, but I pay enough in heating oil that I can't afford more.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't get, I don't get assistance. I don't get any of that, so it's all out of pocket.
Now, there's also some money. I'm not sure how much money is attributed to that. There's a lot of different places to look. I don't know enough about it, but I'll find out more about it. There's one issue I was just thinking about. Oh, yes. In terms of dispatch services is another issue that is becoming very relevant. The governor's agency has proposed that the state police stop providing dispatch services free of charge to all the communities that do not have their own dispatch services. And I think in Plymouth, who's the dispatch service?
We use Ludlow.
Ludlow? Town of Ludlow? Okay. But a lot of other towns, they rely on the state police to call out the different services, whether it's police, fire, ambulance. And so there's a push to regionalize that across the state. The state police is doing so because they've been looking at it since 1969, literally, and they're trying to figure out a better system to set it up to increase or decrease response times. Right now, the state police are understaffed, and the calls that are coming in, 30 to 40% of them are going unanswered, and then they're being transferred over into a different response system. So they've recognized that they don't have the people, they don't have the technology to necessarily deal with the call volumes that are coming in. So there's money attached to it. That's the reason why I'm saying it. There's about $11 million that's been requested, and then another $3 million to help municipalities transition. But anyway, Keith, I saw your hand up.
Howdy, Charlie. Thanks for coming to
Hi,
visit.
Keith.
I had a question for you on a topic we touched on before, mask mandates. Now that the CDC has drastically walked back their guidance, I was wondering what your take was on finally rescinding mask mandates in schools. I know that the governor, he originally kicked the buck down the road to the individual unions and let them make the choice. He seems to have walked back on a lot of his original pronouncements, and he seems to be receptive to getting rid of these mandates. I know your colleagues in the Democratic Party have resisted that. Just recently over in Rutland here in their union, they rescinded mask mandates in school. So
Yeah.
I know it's a big topic for myself. I have a son, 6 years old in Killington. A lot of kids are experiencing, emotional impacts from still wearing masks. So I know that the Woodstock has a bigger say in the union than we, of course, do. So just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer except that it's incredibly emotional. I hate wearing the damn things. I'm sure all of us do. But in terms of balancing what is scientifically recommended, it depends on who you ask. So my personal stance is as soon as we can get away from wearing masks, we should be doing it. I know our policy within the State House is we're wearing masks throughout the rest of the year because we're in small, close quarters. For schools, I thought the policy had been to allow those union districts to still roll them back even now and not to mandate that they have them. So it's been a very local issue. I don't have a better answer. If your question is how do I view it or what's the state doing about it?
Well, I have more, just kind of the bird on the wire view from, what the deliberations are at a higher level, what people, what the talk is, is it going to be a thing? Are they going to start, pushing for that outcome, or is it still going to be in a limbo?
Yeah, I'll share with you a colorful story, if I may. We had a debate last week in the legislature about how we were going to conduct our own business over the next 3 or 4 months because we've had a mask mandate. We've had a hybrid situation, so some people that were not able to come to the State House because they were suffering from COVID symptoms could participate remotely, like we're doing tonight. And they could do that and be on a big screen and then still vote. So we were saying we want to end that. We want people to come back to the State House, and if you're actually going to vote, you have to be there. Unless you have a serious medical condition because of COVID. Tremendous pushback from people because they thought, well, that's not safe. I've looked at the science, and why do this if we don't have to? And the rest of us are saying because we make better laws if we're in person. And then the question was, well, what if there's a snow day, like Friday, and I can't get there? Can I still participate by Zoom? Like, well, no. You got to get there. So it's an incredible discussion about some of the technology we've embraced because we've had to, and then other because maybe it works. But in terms of the masks, there's a lack of uniformity on it. There's a lack of consensus on it. So I'd say that the majority of people want to be done with it, but there are still those people that are driving to make sure that we're still wearing masks. So in the end, it's inertia, and we're wearing masks in the legislature anyway.
Thanks.
Charlie, I had a question. As I take my mask off to ask it, it's a watershed question. I know there's a lot of money that's been put in a big infrastructure bill. It's about $1 trillion, and part of that I think was earmarked for water quality. And we are the source of the Black River up here in Plymouth, and Black River's got at least 2 big problems, one of which you talked about before, which is the Amherst Dam, and the other one is a clay cliff down here on Route 100 across from Pingree Flats that's ever since Irene, whenever it rains, it washes clay into the water and makes Amherst muddy, and then Echo muddy, and then goes down the river and makes Rescue muddy. And from an economic point of view, while skiing is really good to draw people, so is really clean water and fresh, water to swim in. And it's an eyesore and an embarrassment, quite frankly. Is there any way that we could get some grants or get something to clean up those 2 problems?
Well, is it Marie Caduto that's the Tactical Basin Coordinator? And I'd say she'd have much better answers than me. There is money available. It depends on the prioritization of the project. So there are so many different projects for clean water. I know the last time I looked at the list, even for this basin, was over 100 projects. So it really depends on how to elevate that on priority up the list.
Right. I mean, I know manure is a big one from farms, but this is colloidal substance going into what ought to be just pristine mountain streams. And it seems to me, from an economic point of view, it would be a healthy investment to get them to where they're back to being the way they used to be.
Yeah,
I'm not pressing it on you. I'm just saying that if you ever get a chance to elbow somebody to get them in that direction, that would benefit everybody up and down the Black River Valley.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, there's something called the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative, too, and there's last year they had $5 million worth of grants. This year the governor's proposing another $5 million. That's for any number of different outdoor recreation initiatives. Some of it's about facilities, some of it's about trails, some of it's about marketing. But that could be something, if we're talking about that, because there has both an environmental and an economic impact, right?
That's right.
So it might not be environmentally significant as compared to others, but it could be economically significant, which is a different deal. So there could be a different pot of money for that.
Thank you.
Willa?
I'm afraid I need to go back to the inclusion of Plymouth with Woodstock and Reading. It seemed to me that we had more representation when we were with smaller communities, and that Woodstock kind of overwhelms us in voting. Why was it talked about returning to it, to our old way, and then rejected?
Well, I wasn't at the committee meeting at that one. I'm not sure. The process was this. Legislative Apportionment Board looked at the population changes, and then that's not a legislative body. That's an independent body that recommends what the new legislative districts should look like. So they look at the map and try to figure out just on population basis and how to make the numbers work. They also had a notion that they wanted to get rid of 2-member districts. So a lot of towns are grouped together and they have 2 members representing them. Brownsville, Heartland, and Windsor have 2 members representing those 3 communities. So they wanted to change that. So they made their recommendations based on that. The board then, the legislative committee, then went out to the towns and said, we want your feedback as to how do you view this suggestion that we're making to you. Legislative Apportionment Board did it the first time, and then the committee came and sought some input at that point. So there was an opportunity at that point to say, no, we don't like the way it's currently, can you move us to this one? Or yes, we like how it is. So I don't know how much input they got from the town of Plymouth, to be honest. And then when the people were looking at the numbers themselves, how do they add up? Then the existing configuration worked from the number standpoint. Woodstock was, one suggestion would be Bridgewater, Woodstock, and Reading instead of Woodstock, Reading, and Plymouth. So it's a real puzzle. So I'm also sorry you feel like you're not represented.
It's not, Woodstock overwhelms
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, I get it. Like school board representation as well, the same thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just schools.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, well, enough said.
No, I understand what you're saying, and it's hard. I don't envy the people that make that decision to try to come up with the right adjustment. And where they could, they left things alone, figuring it might not be broken.
Well, I mean, it just got changed.
Yeah, not that long ago. It's 2014? 2000? Was it 10 years ago? Right, when it was Dennis Devereaux was the representative, right? Dennis, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of that is too, is that when you think about, even if you're part of Ludlow, they don't have a school anymore. I mean, so our kids go to Plymouth, I mean, I go to Woodstock and all that, so kind of, personally, I think it makes a little more sense to stay where it is, but, you know, rather than go back the other way.
You also have to remember, the town of Plymouth voted to eliminate school choice, so that is why you are with Woodstock.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
I have a question about the Amherst Dam. I live on Lake Lake, and you said it's deteriorated. Now, if it goes, is it going to be like Irene? When we had Irene?
Well, I'm not the expert on that, but I did attend the meeting. I watched the video of the second meeting where the engineers presented the findings as to the condition. Was it hazardous condition, poor condition? There's a third one, right? Can anybody remember the terminology? So it was not an imminent danger of failing, but it was at risk of further deterioration, so it could fail underneath a major storm like Irene.
Are they doing something about trying to fix it?
Yes, so under the current program, the current owners of the dam are required to either remove it or repair it. And so the proposals, I can't remember what. I'm sorry?
You said the owners of the dam. Who owns it?
The family that bought Rennie Gravat's house owns the dam.
Yes, I can't remember their names right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's private owners, and when they bought the property, they didn't realize all the liabilities that came with owning a dam. And when it came clear that the dam was in poor shape and what their responsibility was, they said, oh, we better do something here. So the state has been, the state engineers who are in charge of dams have been watching the dam over different years to figure out, is it in danger of failing? And what they found, if you're looking from the lake on the right-hand side of the dam, is where it's washed out underneath in what was the sluiceway. So that, in a major storm, could collapse. Where there used to be the boards that kept the level up 2 feet higher than it is now, and those boards were also at risk of failing. So they removed the boards that dropped the lake 2 feet in depth, but also from some places 30 feet from the edge of the lake. So what they said, in a major storm event, it could damage a number of homes downstream. And so in order to protect those homes in the event of that, then the dam either had to be removed, which would have lowered another either 2 or 4 feet, I can't remember which. 3 feet. So they'd have to remove the dam or repair it. Repairing it, I think, was $500,000 and change, and removing it is $400,000 and less. So the owners have to figure out what they want to do with it. Now, there's a Friends of Amherst Lake Association that's trying to look at raising money to buy the dam and repair the dam to make sure or to keep the level about what it is now or raise it back to where it was. There's no public financial assistance for that. So the issue would be there is public financial assistance to remove a dam. So if you want to rebuild it and get the level back to where you want it, then you got to raise money to do it. So that was what the outcome of that was, and Alicia is the person on Amherst Lake?
Yeah,
Alicia Armstrong, who's organizing that, trying to get it to be a nonprofit organization, a 501c3. They're close to it. The attorney said, yes, we can do this, but you have to pay X amount of dollars. And then once that was in place, to raise money to actually go towards purchasing the land from the current dam owners and repairing the dam. But it's not cheap.
There was an informational meeting run by two fellows, and I think I put in the Plymouth Press the website where you could look at that. I can find that information again if you want. Because there was an interesting meeting.
Yeah.
And probably gain a lot of information from it.
They have maps about where it was before the dam was lowered, and then where the shoreline is now and where the shoreline would be if you took the dam out. So they're really very good maps. It's also interesting to see how the plant growth has come in, where it's growing now. What has that done for access from the river? It's not very navigable at this point. What was there is the yacht club, I could be getting the term wrong, doesn't really have immediate access from their docks that was there before. You'd have to put docks way out into where the lake had been before.
It goes from like an 80-acre lake to like a 64-acre lake or something to that effect.
And
The north end is the most affected end.
it's still really deep.
Yeah. It would be the 11th or 12th deepest lake in the state of Vermont, even with reducing the level.
Yeah,
95 feet deep or something like that.
90 feet.
North end, and that's the most affected part.
Wasn't thinking to be talking about dams. Yeah, sure.
I know this, from what I've heard from my office and from these people, that the access would be, if they take the dam out, the access would have to be dredged out, because right now it's barely, you know. And Hawk Marina, which is what you were talking
Yes,
about.
sorry, not the yacht club, yeah.
That's pretty much just like that.
Yeah.
But they are trying to get that 501c3 established. And they did say that if that dam ever failed, it would basically do like what Irene did to Scott Terrace, you know, the lower part of the
Yep.
lakes. The water was up to the roofs. And the state park, that would all get affected.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of the same effects as Irene if that dam was to fail completely and the water was to go.
And that's particularly because when the flashboards were still in there, which was.
Yes.
Flashboards.
So they reduced a lot of cubic feet of water, just by reducing that by 2 feet.
And there's a lot of silt built up behind that dam anyway, too. Yep.
But I thought in that presentation that it said it was not going to be devastating. That's what I remember, so I'll try to get you that.
And if the dam did fail, it wouldn't just be like, it would degrade over hours. I mean, it would take more than just, an instant snap of the finger.
But definitely the Money Brook issue, that's the mud issue, the clay issue. I mean, the only way to really remedy that, in my opinion, I mean, his parents have owned that land forever and ever. I mean, and that's owned by the guy that owns Round Top ski area. Is whenever it rains, it doesn't take much, it just slides down and in the brook it goes and then down in the Black River it goes. So you need like a wall, an
Yeah,
area wall to
right.
stop the runoff.
Or planting or something on that, but if it's
No, no.
clay, probably won't, yeah.
Not just planting, you'd need 150 dump trucks with, 1 foot substrate and 2 or 3 backhoes putting the thing together. I mean, it's a huge project.
I think when Ralph Michael was alive, he'd estimated it was gonna be millions of dollars.
I think 3 million was the number we saw bandied about.
It's a big project. And the last thing I'll say is that there will be an open seat to represent Plymouth next year. I'm not running for re-election, so I'm running for lieutenant governor. And so, there is an open seat. So if you know someone, I think I know someone in the room might be interested. If you know someone who wants to run for the state legislature, let me know. I'm happy to share whatever I've learned over the past 6 years doing it. It's been my pleasure representing the town. So thank you for the opportunity.
I'd like to thank you, Charlie, and thank you for bringing Carolyn with you tonight. We haven't seen her for a while.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It was a really pleasant evening from my end. Good night and drive home safely.
Recording stopped.
Good meeting. Good deal. It's, I think a lack of controversy says something about this board. That we're getting things done, we're not ruffling too many feathers, and we're...
People are pleased.
Yeah, I do. I feel that way.
Or not to hide. We would have heard something on Zoom.
Yeah, good job.
It's almost disappointing.